Hello, my name is Comfort Oluwaseyi Fatoye. Welcome to my research presentation titled Gender Ideology. Does this impact self-silencing behaviors, relationship status, and sex differences? Well, let's find out. A brief overview on what we will cover, just a little bit about myself as the researcher, background to the research, current situation and past research, as well as some hypotheses and predictions we're making about the study, and methodology results, and a bit of a discussion about what the implications are going forward as well. This is me just before this research stress. Um, and interestingly, this presentation will actually be my final requirement and submission to complete my MSc degree in counseling at Bangor University. In my over 100 supervised hours in placement, remote and in person, I experienced cultural influences such as gender ideology in my work. This influenced my research interest into this topic. McLeod suggested that the impact of self will always be in relation to culture and environment, and gender ideologies such as masculine norms in relation to the self, such as exhibiting self silencing behaviors, are extremely important in counseling and mental health. This is because masculine norms and self silencing behaviors have a theme of disconnection of self or restriction on self. And the past research, especially, has individually explored both concepts on their own grounds. Masculine norms has been researched deeply on how this impacts personal and social issues, as well as the self silencing behaviors has been seen to impact depression and eating disorders individually. A research showed the weak relationship between gender ideologies and self silencing behaviors, but this was done on adolescents in America. It also found that gender ideologies had more relationships with ethnicity and sex differences as opposed to it connecting directly or strongly with self silencing behaviors. This is one of the problems that has been highlighted, and so we'll be looking into how specifically in this research we can establish a direct or linear loop relationship between masculine norms and self-silencing behaviors in adults above 18 years of age. There's been also a lot of researches on self-silencing behaviors for self on sex differences for self-silencing behaviors, and also we'll be exploring how whether there are different relationship status and sex differences on masculine norms as well as on self-silencing behaviors. This is because Jack and Dale 1992 proposed that there is a prevalence of self-silencing behaviors in people who show a need to maintain intimate relationships. So we are predicting that there would be a positive relationship that exists between masculine norms and self-silencing behaviors. This is because, as previous research has shown, masculine norms and self-silencing behaviors individually already exhibit a number of similar negative impacts on well-being. And because of the gender ideology that has been proposed to influence self-silencing behaviors, we are seeing if there would be a direct relationship that exists between masculine norms and self-silencing behaviors. We are also going to see if the results of this particular research are consistent with previous research that shows that there are sex differences that exist between self-silencing behaviors and sex differences that exist in masculine norms. We would also be predicting that there will be relationship status differences found in masculine norms and relationship status differences found in self-silencing behaviors, where maybe married and people who are in relationships should score differently than those who are single or in complicated relationships. Permissions were sought and received from the developers of the measures used in this research. One of the To measure the masculine norms, we used the masculine role inventory by Snell 1986, and to measure the self-silencing behaviors, we used the silencing the self scale by Jack 1991, and we developed a demographics questionnaire to explore sex and relationship differences in in this study. We had a rich demographic information where we had a total of 61 participants, and the 61 participants were the ones who had completed all the questionnaires and consented to the study. Out of the 61 participants, we had 41 females and 20 males, as well as we had 40 respondents who identified as heterosexual, and we had 18 who identified as queer, with 3 preferring not to say. We also had 48 people within the 18 to 25 age range, where 21 and 22 were the highest numbers of respondents within the age range. We had 7 people who were between 26 to 30 years of age, and we had 6 people in 6 participants who were above 30. The ethnicity was predominantly white, followed by those who identified as Asian, and then blacks, and then just 2 participants who identified with multi-ethnicity. Um, we also had 25 people who responded that they were in a relationship in this research, as well as 25 people who were single, and we just had 1 that was divorced and 3 that preferred not to say. Pearson correlation identified a strong positive relationship between masculine norms and self-silencing behaviors, as the line graph shows. It shows as it tilts towards the right upwards. There is a strong positive relationship between masculine norms and self-silencing behaviors. We also found that there were sex differences in masculine norms, where males scored higher than females, while there were no sex differences in self-silencing behaviors. Analysis of variance, which is ANOVA, identified a significant difference in relationship status on masculine norms. Um, However, there were no relationship status differences on self-silencing behaviors. Here we found that those who were married and in a relationship scored differently than those who were single and in a complicated relationship or divorced. The main focus of this research was to find out if there was a direct relationship between masculine norms, specifically in the gender ideology category, and self-silencing behaviors. The result not only established a relationship but also a positive relationship between masculine norms and self-silencing behaviors. This is important because it also adds to the body of knowledge that in adults above the age of 18, especially in university students in the United Kingdom, there is a positive relationship between masculine norms and self-silencing behaviors. This is decidedly different from the previous research that had a weak relationship between masculine norms and self-silencing behaviors in adolescents. It also identifies that um, there were just 3 out of the self-silencing scales. So there were subscales. There were 4 subscales in the silencing the self scale, and out of these 4 subscales, 3 of them that emphasize the restriction and division of the self positively correlated with all the 3 masculine norm subscales. The only subscale that didn't correlate with the masculine norms is the subscale titled Care as Self-Sacrifice. And just from the name of it, you would infer that this particular subscale in the silencing self subscale is different from the other three subscales that emphasize self-restriction as well as division of the self and disconnection of the self. The results also show that the sex differences identified in masculine norms is consistent with previous research where males score higher than females. However, the research in self-silencing behaviors differ because there's been some research, especially from the founder and proponent of this construct titled self-silencing behaviors, as well as a few others that have shown that there are no sex differences in self-silencing behaviors. But other researchers, such as Grach et al. 1995, shows that there has been sex differences in self-silencing behaviors, especially in the perception of what self-silencing behaviors mean to males and females. Females who Grach et al. Says proposes that females would self-silence to save their relationship. However, males would self-silence because it emphasizes the masculinity in the gender ideology. However, this result shows that there were no sex differences in males and females. There were no sex differences in self-silencing behaviors where males and females scored equally. There were no differences at all. And this is consistent with Jack's idea, the proponent of self-silencing behaviors. The last part of the result also shows that there's been interesting research from Jack 1991 that shows that people who are occupied with the need to maintain their intimate relationships would have higher self-silencing behaviors. However, this research identified that there were no relationship status differences on self-silencing behaviors. Interestingly, we found out that on masculine norms, there were actually relationship status differences. So we had single and divorced respondents scoring much differently from those who were married and in relationships. What does this mean? It means that sex differences are a very big part of who we are as an idea of who we are as ourselves, and will always be in relationship with the culture and environment. And that is why we need to explore culture and gender ideology, specifically masculine norms, and in further researches feminine norms, to see how this whether feminine norms differ directly in males and females, and how the idea of gender conformity or gender non-conformity can be explored further to see its impact on well-being and mental health. Self-silencing behaviors are seen as a way to protect oneself from the need to maintain our intimate relationships. However, the long-term effects on self is very telling, as it affects not only well-being such as depression, but also eating disorders and other negative impacts that has been researched. And seeing how the effect of masculine norms, especially in this day and age where gender non-conformity and gender construct is mostly tagged as a social and um, cultural aspect, different from the sex that people identify with either from birth or as they grow old. This is a very important piece of research that would add to the body of knowledge. It also informs that as practitioners, we should be more reflective and research focused as we encounter our clients in therapy, and it may have to, look at a collective and person-centered approach. A few takeaways would be that continuous acknowledgement of cultural implications on mental health, both negative and positive, are important. We would need to keep on revising what this means for each individual as we encounter them, and to keep reflecting and researching on the implications of these cultural aspects of our lives. Also, that person-centered techniques are needed for conversations and interventions around gender ideology and its impact. This is because not one person is the same, and understanding that there may be a theme around a particular number of people is different from how these experiences differ per person. So, person-centered techniques are needed for these interventions and conversations that would have impacts or positive impacts on our on daily lives. It will also be important to note that I personally learned that it's important to be a reflective and research focused mental health practitioner in how I relate with my clients and their own experiences, and just continuous research would help to bring the fullness of um, how we relate with our clients and also you as a mental health practitioner. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. Please, if you have any questions or alternatively, you could just email me or you could write in the comments and I would attend to you. Thank you so much for listening to my research presentation.